Tesla taking the biggest hit, down 6%. That's not the only potential headache for Elon Musk. Leaders in Canada are going after his ventures specifically.
Tesla just continues to disappoint. Is this all because of Elon Musk's other activities, or have the sort of, first adopters already filled their garages?
In the span of just a few brutal weeks, Tesla went from the pride of American innovation to the face of a financial nightmare. $135 billion in market value vanished almost overnight, and what triggered it wasn't just bad luck. It was an economic ambush, years in the making. Protesters are now flooding Tesla dealerships across the country. Wall Street investors are panicking, and even the White House is scrambling as Elon Musk's empire crumbles in real time. This disaster wasn't random. Canada and Europe have unleashed a wave of trade retaliation, targeting Tesla directly. Rising tariffs, collapsing demand, and political chaos are now crushing what was once America's brightest tech company. So how did Tesla lose everything? Why are American workers and global markets turning against Musk? And most importantly, can Tesla survive what's coming next? What's happening? Tesla's collapse wasn't inevitable. It was engineered by a series of political decisions that backfired catastrophically. The Trump administration's aggressive tariff policies, aimed at punishing foreign competitors, ended up punishing America's most famous electric vehicle maker instead. The problem started with a trade war that quickly spiraled out of control. In March 2025, Trump raised tariffs on Canadian and Mexican imports by 25% and slapped an additional 10% levy on Canadian energy exports. Tariffs on European goods, particularly automotive components, were also increased. The administration claimed this was to protect American jobs and curb illegal trade practices. But the unintended victim was Tesla. Tesla's supply chain, though based largely in California and Texas, remained heavily dependent on foreign components. Batteries required raw materials like cobalt and lithium, much of which came from Canada and China. Key parts like semiconductors, sensors, and aluminum panels were sourced from Europe. When tariffs surged, Tesla's production costs skyrocketed virtually overnight. To make matters worse, retaliatory tariffs from the European Union and Canada specifically targeted U.S. goods, including electric vehicles. Tesla's once profitable export channels to Europe and Canada suddenly became unviable. Production slowed, inventory ballooned, and costs exploded. Elon Musk, already under scrutiny for his ties to the Trump administration, now faced an impossible dilemma: raise prices and risk alienating customers, or absorb the cost and bleed cash. The company did both and failed at both. As tariffs choked Tesla's supply chain, the company's ability to deliver vehicles on time and at a competitive price collapsed. Dealers struggled to move inventory, and customers abandoned the brand. Tesla had walked straight into an economic trap of its own making. And as this economic disaster keeps unraveling, one thing is clear: Tesla's collapse is only the beginning. If you want to keep up with how deep this crisis goes, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Europe and Canada's revenge. Tesla's supply chain crisis quickly turned into an international nightmare when Canada and the European Union launched a targeted retaliation campaign aimed squarely at Elon Musk's company. What began as a generic trade war escalated into a full-blown vendetta. Canada, once Tesla's second-largest market outside the United States, delivered the first blow. The Canadian government announced that Tesla vehicles would no longer qualify for federal electric vehicle rebates. They also froze $43 million Canadian dollars in pending payments tied to previous rebate claims, citing concerns over Tesla's financial practices. Effectively, Tesla's Canadian customer base evaporated overnight. The European Union followed suit, imposing new tariffs specifically on American-made electric vehicles. More devastatingly, several EU countries announced plans to exclude Tesla from their electric vehicle subsidy programs, while accelerating partnerships with local automakers like Volkswagen, Renault, and Stellantis. In Germany, France, and Italy, consumers suddenly faced thousands of dollars in additional costs if they chose a Tesla. Elon Musk and Tesla's leadership were blindsided. The retaliation wasn't just financial, it was personal. European and Canadian officials made it clear that Tesla was being punished for Musk's close relationship with President Trump and his administration's economic aggression. The result was catastrophic. Tesla's international sales collapsed. Exports to Europe and Canada dropped by nearly 40% in less than 3 months. Revenue forecasts were slashed. Investors fled. For the first time in its history, Tesla faced the real possibility of international market irrelevance. Yet the worst was still to come. Even as governments retaliated, it was ordinary Americans who delivered the next blow, a grassroots consumer revolt that would rip Tesla's brand apart from within. The consumer revolt. The troubles didn't end with collapsing stock prices and trade sanctions. In many ways, the final nail in the company's coffin came from the very people who had once been its biggest supporters, American consumers. The tariff war had already driven up vehicle prices, but it was the political chaos surrounding Tesla that broke the trust of everyday buyers. Elon Musk's perceived alliance with President Trump alienated progressive consumers, while soaring prices and dealership protests angered working-class families who could no longer afford an electric vehicle. The backlash started quietly. First as social media campaigns calling for boycotts, then as protests outside Tesla dealerships in key states like Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Videos of Tesla owners smashing their own vehicles went viral, fueling a narrative that Musk's empire had betrayed its own customers. By April 2025, the effects were visible in the numbers. Tesla's U.S. sales dropped by 22% in a single quarter. Dealerships reported massive inventory backlogs. Some locations, particularly in rural areas, began laying off staff. The Model 3 and Model Y, once seen as symbols of the future, now sat unsold on dealership lots. Consumers who previously viewed Tesla as an aspirational brand saw something else, a political pawn, overpriced and unstable. Labor unions joined the protests, blaming Tesla for exacerbating inflation and hurting American jobs. And so, as Tesla's financial empire crumbled, it wasn't foreign governments or Wall Street investors who delivered the final blow. It was the American public. But Tesla's nightmare didn't end there. It only began tearing itself apart from within. How Musk's public meltdowns pushed investors away. The collapse of Tesla's stock was not just a result of tariffs or trade wars. It was also fueled by the actions of the company's most visible and polarizing figure, Elon Musk himself. In the middle of a fragile moment when confidence in Tesla's future was crumbling, Musk made one gamble after another, each one pushing investors further away. It all began when Tesla's stock started its historic 9-week losing streak. Rather than calming fears or reassuring shareholders, Elon Musk took to social media and public interviews, doubling down on controversial statements and unpredictable behavior. He openly mocked critics, lashed out at government regulators, and even made dismissive comments about the very investors who were trying to stabilize the company's plummeting value. In one televised interview, Musk declared, "If you don't like the volatility, don't buy Tesla." That statement, intended to sound confident, instead triggered a fresh wave of panic on Wall Street. Institutional investors who had already been uneasy about Tesla's balance sheet began to quietly offload their shares, unwilling to tie their fortunes to a CEO who appeared increasingly erratic. Worse, Musk's public spat with Canadian and European leaders, accusing them of economic sabotage, alienated key trading partners, and added fuel to the political firestorm already raging around Tesla. As tariffs continued to bite into Tesla's margins, Musk's behavior convinced many that the company lacked steady leadership in a time of crisis. The gamble had failed, and the financial fallout had only begun. But the public meltdowns were just the first crack in Tesla's crumbling foundation. Inside the company, a much deeper crisis was brewing: the employee exodus. While headlines focused on Tesla's collapsing stock, few noticed the growing unrest inside the company's factories and offices. For years, Tesla employees had worked under enormous pressure, believing in the mission and following Musk's ambitious vision. But as the trade war intensified and Musk's public behavior spiraled, that loyalty began to fracture. The first signs appeared at Tesla's Gigafactory in Texas. Workers staged an unplanned walkout, protesting sudden wage freezes and mandatory overtime imposed to offset the soaring costs of imported parts. These labor tensions were aggravated by news that Tesla's stock losses had wiped out the value of employee stock options, options that many workers had counted on as part of their compensation. As weeks passed, the situation escalated. Skilled engineers and technicians began resigning in record numbers. leaving critical production lines understaffed. Internal leaks revealed that Tesla's human resources department was overwhelmed, unable to fill vacancies fast enough to keep pace with the exodus. On social media, former employees spoke out, accusing the company of prioritizing investor appeasement over worker welfare. Labor unions, long marginalized at Tesla, seized the opportunity to organize protests outside dealerships and factories. Their message was clear. Musk's leadership had failed the workforce. The combination of rising tariffs, declining stock value, and internal chaos created a perfect storm that Tesla's management could no longer control. Yet the workforce wasn't the only part of Tesla's foundation crumbling. Beyond its factories, another vital link in the chain was about to snap: the Supplier rebellion. Tesla's success had always depended on a complex web of global suppliers. From battery components sourced in Canada to precision parts manufactured in Germany and South Korea, the company's production model relied heavily on international cooperation. But as the trade war escalated and Tesla's financial troubles mounted, that cooperation began to unravel. The first blow came from Canadian suppliers. In retaliation for the United States tariffs, the Canadian government imposed new export fees on raw materials, crucial to Tesla's battery production. Several suppliers, facing their own rising costs and political pressure, chose to terminate contracts with Tesla rather than risk further losses. In Europe, the situation was no better. Longtime partners in Germany and France expressed concerns about Tesla's declining creditworthiness and erratic leadership. Some demanded advanced payments. Others quietly shifted production capacity to rival automakers who promised more stability. This supplier rebellion further crippled Tesla's ability to maintain production targets. Delays mounted, assembly lines stalled, and costs skyrocketed as the company scrambled to find alternative sources. Each broken contract added another layer of uncertainty, pushing Tesla closer to the brink. However, the true collapse would come not from factories or suppliers, but from the cold, calculated decisions of Wall Street itself. Why Wall Street abandoned Tesla overnight? It is one thing to lose the confidence of employees or suppliers. It is another to lose the faith of the financial giants that fund the entire operation. In March of 2025, Tesla faced the unthinkable, an investor panic that drained its financial lifeblood overnight. The trigger was not a single event, but a series of cascading failures. Musk's public outbursts, employee unrest, and supplier withdrawals had already shaken investor confidence. But when news leaked that Tesla's cash reserves had fallen below $10 billion, a dangerously low threshold for a company of its scale, the panic became unstoppable. Institutional investors, including major pension funds and hedge funds, began liquidating their Tesla holdings. Their exit triggered automated sell orders, sending the stock price into a freefall. Within 48 hours, Tesla's market capitalization dropped by more than $135 billion, erasing nearly one-fifth of its total value. This financial collapse did not just affect shareholders. It cut off Tesla's access to credit markets, making it nearly impossible to secure new loans or raise capital. Suppliers demanded upfront payments. Employees' stock options became worthless. Production slowed to a crawl. Wall Street had abandoned Tesla, not because of one mistake, but because the entire structure had collapsed under the weight of political chaos, corporate mismanagement, and economic retaliation. Yet as Tesla fell, others were waiting to pick up the pieces. How Europe's auto giant crushed Tesla. Volkswagen did not waste a second when Tesla's nightmare began. As Tesla's stock plummeted and American consumers turned away, Volkswagen saw a golden opportunity to strike. For years, the German automaker had been quietly building one of the largest electric vehicle production infrastructures in the world. Now, with Tesla's house on fire, Volkswagen walked right in and took over the neighborhood. It started with pricing. While Tesla struggled with inflated production costs due to tariffs and trade wars, Volkswagen undercut them on price. Volkswagen's modular electric platform allowed them to produce a wide range of models at scale, from compact hatchbacks to luxury sedans, all at prices American and European consumers could actually afford. Tesla's Model 3 and Model Y became overpriced artifacts overnight, no longer the default choice for the middle-class electric dream. But Volkswagen's real power move was not just pricing, it was control. The German automaker owned its battery production facilities, raw material contracts, and, crucially, its European market share. With Canada and Europe slapping retaliatory tariffs on Tesla and American electric vehicles, Volkswagen positioned itself as the patriotic, homegrown alternative. By the time the dust settled, Tesla had lost its foothold in Europe. Volkswagen, meanwhile, had solidified its position as the continent's electric vehicle leader. But Tesla's global nightmare was only getting started. As Volkswagen tightened its grip on Europe, another competitor halfway across the world delivered a death blow Tesla never saw coming: BYD's coup. While Tesla was busy fighting fires at home, China's Build Your Dreams, better known as BYD, quietly executed one of the most ruthless corporate coups in automotive history. As Tesla's sales collapsed under the weight of tariffs, trade wars, and public backlash, BYD moved fast to take everything Tesla had lost. BYD wasn't just another Chinese automaker. It was a vertically integrated machine. BYD controlled its own battery production, raw material sourcing, and supply chain, all without depending on the fragile American-European trade relationships that Tesla relied on. When Canadian and European sanctions cut off Tesla's global sales pipeline, BYD filled the void overnight. Chinese consumers, long priced out of Tesla's premium products, embraced BYD's affordable, reliable electric vehicles. And they weren't alone. Countries across Asia, Africa, and even parts of South America shifted their government fleet contracts, tax incentives, and infrastructure investments to BYD, leaving Tesla out in the cold. But BYD's real power move was psychological. It no longer played second fiddle to Tesla. It became the market leader, the innovator, the name consumers trusted. Tesla had built the electric vehicle dream. BYD cashed it in. And just when Elon Musk thought he could stop the bleeding, an even bigger betrayal arrived from north of the border: Canada's shock decision. Elon Musk always assumed Canada would be a quiet, stable partner in Tesla's rise. That assumption was shattered when Canada, furious over American tariffs and political interference, decided to play hardball. It wasn't enough that Canada had imposed 25% tariffs on American electric vehicles. In a move no one expected, Canada went deeper, cutting off Tesla's access to essential raw materials: nickel, cobalt, lithium, all resources sourced from Canadian mines and previously shipped south to fuel Tesla's battery production, were suddenly redirected to European and Asian buyers. This was not a bluff. Canada's provinces passed emergency legislation banning the export of critical minerals to American automakers. New long-term contracts were signed with Volkswagen, BYD, and other competitors, and Tesla, it was locked out. Without Canadian resources, Tesla's battery factories in Nevada and Texas ground to a halt. Production slowed, costs soared, and Wall Street's confidence in the company evaporated. Canada, once Tesla's silent partner, had become its executioner. But Canada wasn't the only one who had moved on. Around the world, consumers, corporations, and entire governments were now making a clear, irreversible choice: the global market shift. Tesla had long been the darling of the electric vehicle revolution, but as the company's stock collapsed and political chaos engulfed its supply chains, the global market began to shift in ways that no one in Silicon Valley had prepared for. It wasn't just that consumers stopped buying Teslas, it was that entire nations rewrote their energy policies to exclude Tesla's influence. European countries redirected electric vehicle subsidies to domestic brands like Volkswagen, Renault, and Stellantis. In Asia, government incentives shifted to Chinese manufacturers, led by BYD. In Canada, infrastructure spending was reallocated to support local electric vehicle startups and European partnerships. Fleet contracts that once belonged to Tesla were canceled. Cities and municipalities removed Tesla charging stations in favor of universal, brand-agnostic platforms. The global narrative changed overnight, from Tesla leads the future to Tesla is yesterday's news. What started as a stock crash became a full-blown collapse of Tesla's global relevance. But the economic earthquake was just the beginning. Beneath the corporate drama, the real devastation was about to hit the American workforce, the political landscape, and Elon Musk himself. The labor revolt. It began as murmurs outside Tesla factories, workers gathering in break rooms, whispering about pay cuts, skyrocketing prices, and broken promises. But by the spring of 2025, those whispers had grown into a deafening roar. Across America's industrial heartland, the very workers who once looked to Elon Musk as a symbol of the future were now marching against him. Blue-collar workers, many of whom had dedicated years of their lives assembling Tesla vehicles, were furious. And this time, it wasn't just about wages, it was about survival. The collapse of Tesla's stock wasn't just a Wall Street headline. It was a direct hit to thousands of American families who depended on those jobs. As Tesla's market value plummeted by $135 billion, production slowed, suppliers were forced to scale back, and entire communities felt the sting. Factories in Michigan, Ohio, and California faced mass layoffs. For the workers left behind, over time, hours vanished, benefits were cut, and the future looked bleak. The final spark came when reports surfaced of Tesla dealership protests erupting across the country. Consumers were abandoning Tesla in droves, and factory workers saw the writing on the wall. They didn't wait for the company to collapse quietly. Instead, they walked out. Strikes spread from Fremont to Detroit. Unions, once cautious around Musk's anti-union rhetoric, seized the moment and organized mass demonstrations. The demands were clear: restore jobs, stabilize production, and stop using workers as pawns in a global trade war they never asked for. These protests quickly became national news. Images of Tesla workers holding signs that read, "Betrayed by billionaires" and "We built this, you broke it," flooded social media. Their message resonated far beyond the factory gates. American workers everywhere began to see Tesla's downfall not just as a corporate failure, but as a betrayal of the very people who built the company's success. And while workers demanded accountability, Wall Street faced a nightmare of its own: how Tesla's collapse shattered the U.S. economy. When Tesla's market value fell by $135 billion, it wasn't just Elon Musk who suffered. Wall Street itself felt the tremors. The company's stock, once the crown jewel of American innovation, had been a cornerstone of major investment portfolios. Pension funds, retirement accounts, and institutional investors had all bet heavily on Tesla's continued dominance. Now that bet was collapsing in real time. The panic spread quickly. As Tesla shares plunged, broader indices like the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 tumbled alongside it. Financial analysts warned that Tesla's meltdown was a canary in the coal mine, a warning that America's economic engine was sputtering. By late March of 2025, nearly $1 trillion in market value had evaporated from the U.S. stock market. The ripple effects hit every sector. The technology market, already under pressure from tariffs and rising costs, saw its worst quarter in over a decade. Banking institutions tightened credit lines, fearing further losses. Manufacturing stocks followed Tesla's decline, as investors questioned whether America's industrial sector could withstand the fallout of the ongoing tariff wars. For millions of Americans, the economic chaos wasn't abstract. Retirement accounts shrank, mortgage rates climbed, job openings vanished overnight. The labor protests outside Tesla factories had evolved into a nationwide economic crisis, and Wall Street's nightmare was only beginning. But beyond the stock market, another storm was brewing on the global stage. A backlash that would redraw alliances and isolate America like never before. The global trade fallout. As Tesla's collapse dominated headlines in the United States, the rest of the world was quietly preparing its own retaliation. The trade policies that had fueled America's crisis were now backfiring spectacularly. Canada and the European Union, enraged by years of tariffs and economic aggression under the Trump administration, seized the moment. In Brussels and Ottawa, leaders convened emergency meetings. Their response wasn't about Tesla, it was about America's trade war. The European Union announced sweeping tariffs on American-made vehicles, including a targeted tax increase on electric cars. Canada, once America's most reliable trade partner, implemented retaliatory tariffs on U.S. technology imports and raw materials. But it didn't stop there. Latin American countries began exploring new trade partnerships with China and the European Union. Asian markets, witnessing the chaos unfolding in Washington, accelerated efforts to bypass American manufacturing altogether. America's global reputation as an economic powerhouse was rapidly unraveling. This wasn't a Tesla problem anymore. It was an American problem, a direct result of protectionist policies that had alienated allies and emboldened competitors. The world was no longer waiting for America to lead. They were building a new economic order without it. And as the global backlash intensified, Washington was left staring at a shrinking list of options. The three terrifying options left for America. By the time the dust settled, the United States faced a grim reality. The Tesla collapse had triggered an economic and political crisis of historic proportions. And now Washington had only three paths left, each more dangerous than the last. The first option was to rebuild fractured alliances. Canada and the European Union made it clear that tariffs would need to be rolled back, trade agreements renegotiated, and economic trust restored. But this path required political compromise. something in short supply in the polarized climate of 2025. It would mean admitting that the tariff war had failed, a bitter pill for the Trump administration to swallow. The second option was to double down on domestic production. Energy leaders and manufacturing executives urged the White House to ramp up U.S.-based electric vehicle production, mining, and refining. But this strategy required massive investments, relaxed regulations, and years of development before any results could materialize. It was a long-term gamble with no immediate relief for struggling workers or spiraling stock markets. The third option was the most dangerous of all. Seek new suppliers and allies among unstable nations. Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and other politically volatile countries offered short-term trade deals. But at what cost? Economic dependence on authoritarian regimes could expose the United States to new risks, from supply disruptions to geopolitical blackmail. None of these options offered an easy way out. America's economic dominance was crumbling, and every move now came with catastrophic risks. And by the time America chooses, the world may have already moved on without it. And there you have it, the shocking collapse of Tesla, not just as a company, but as a symbol of American dominance in technology and innovation. From tariffs to trade wars, from Wall Street panic to labor revolts. This wasn't just Tesla's downfall. It was a warning shot for every American industry caught in the crossfire. But the real question now is, what happens next? Will the United States rebuild its alliances? Can Elon Musk regain the public's trust? Or has America already lost the electric vehicle race for good? I want to hear what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Tesla can bounce back? Or is this the end of the road? And if you want to stay ahead of stories like this, the ones the media won't tell you, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications.